Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. Tonight is part of our festival about Asian images and films. We're showing movies made in the 50s, which next brings us to a movie that at first glance doesn't really seem to fit into our festival, since there are no Asian characters shown in the movie. But film historian Peter Feng is here to tell us why he wanted it included in our series. Welcome back, Peter.
Thank you.
Now, the movie is Bad Day at Black Rock. MGM made it in 1955. It's one of those movies that's wall-to-wall with either Academy Award winners or people who soon would be, including Spencer Tracy, Walter Brennan, Lee Marvin, Ernest Borgnine, and Dean Jagger. Why did you pick this film?
It's fascinating that there's no Japanese American or Asian American actor in the film, isn't there? You'd think that there maybe would be, because we're investigating this history of the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
This came 10 years later. Mm-hmm. We don't want to give too much of the plot away, but yeah, talk a little about that, the internment of Japanese Americans.
Well, shortly after Pearl Harbor, there was such anxiety about Japanese Americans on the West Coast that the decision was made to move 100,000 Japanese Americans living in Washington, Oregon, and California into inland concentration camps. But now we're in the 50s and we're going into the civil rights era, and I think America is examining its past and acknowledging the mistakes it's made and the steps it's taken to correct them. And so this is a film that turns on this period in history and reassessing it.
And not much had been done about that subject in film up to this time, had it?
That's true. Other than Go for Broke, there had been very little acknowledgement of even the existence of these camps. I mean, I think as soon as the war was over, most people realized that this had been a mistake, that people's civil liberties had been violated and their lives had been really damaged, and that it wasn't really in keeping with the ideals of inclusiveness that America had prized itself on.
Do you think our country was just, it was too close to home at this point to be addressing that in a drama at that time?
Obviously, there were a lot of people who remembered Bataan, Corregidor, and things like that, and they had geared up to fight the enemy. So there were a lot of those feelings about the Japanese. But also, Japanese Americans weren't really pushing. It's not like they were protesting about their treatment. Many of them just wanted to put it behind them. They felt shame that they had been imprisoned, even if it hadn't been for anything they've done. I think if you get put in prison and you live there for a couple of years, you think that maybe you did do something wrong. It affects you psychologically. So a lot of Japanese Americans just tried to put it behind them. And so if they weren't pushing to talk about it, who else was going to?
Well, let's look at the film. It's really a great one. Here also starring Robert Ryan, Anne Francis, and John Erickson, directed by the great John Sturges. Bad Day at Black Rock.